The Young and the Restless spoilers. Tuesday, full February 4th, 2025. Victor Newman's footsteps resonated through the marble floors of the Newman Ranch as he led Jack Abbott into his study. The tension in the air was palpable, evident from the moment Jack set foot onto the property. Their long-standing rivalry had weathered countless storms, corporate takeovers, personal vendettas, and family feuds. Yet this time, the conflict was personal, centering on the younger generation, and hinged on a profound misunderstanding that threatened to pull their families apart in a way neither man could have anticipated. Jack stood near the large bay window that overlooked the sweeping ranch grounds. Horses grazed in the distance, and the garden was awash in vibrant colors of late summer blossoms. But inside the study, the mood was anything but calm. Victor, clad in a tailored suit, approached Jack with the confidence and authority only he could muster. He did not waste time on small talk. "I need you to make something very clear to your son," Victor began, his voice low and unwavering. "Tell Kyle he needs to stay away from Claire." Jack's brow furrowed. Even though he had some inkling about Victor's concerns, he needed to hear them explicitly. The relationship dynamics involving Claire had become a focal point of recent family discussions, and now the topic had landed squarely in the middle of this Newman-Abbott confrontation. Jack paused before responding, choosing his words carefully. He had learned long ago that any careless statement could ignite a tempest when dealing with Victor Newman. "Why should Kyle stay away from Claire?" Jack asked, struggling to maintain composure. "The two of them, as far as I understand, have been friends for a while now. Claire is going through a rough patch and appreciates having people around who care. Are you aware she doesn't actually want to be left alone?" Victor exhaled sharply. "That might be what she thinks she wants. But in my view, there are times when a person in her situation should be allowed to forget the past by isolating from sources of stress, especially from meddling young men. If I've learned anything from my own experience," he continued, casting a quick glance at a portrait of himself and his family on the wall, "it's that confusion and too many emotional voices can complicate an already challenging time." Jack frowned, turning away from the window to face Victor directly. "If Kyle and Claire want to talk, that's their choice. They're grown, or at least old enough to understand what they need in order to heal. Claire is not someone who benefits from solitude, she wants everyone's support. Why would you deny her that comfort?" Victor's stance was firm. His gaze was cold, his jaw clenched. "You don't understand, Jack. Claire needs space to process her pain without outside influences. And if Kyle can't see that, you'll have to show him." Despite his measured tone, it was clear that Victor was issuing a veiled threat, implying the possibility of further measures if Jack refused to cooperate. Jack Abbott, never one to be intimidated by Victor's menacing undertones, raised his chin. "Victor, with all due respect, I think you're wrong. If you push Claire away from the people who care about her, you might do more harm than good. And asking me to keep Kyle away is stepping over a line I'm not willing to cross." Victor's eyes narrowed. He was silent for a moment, as if recalculating his strategy. Their conversation ended on a tense note, neither man willing to concede. Jack left the ranch shortly thereafter, both men fully aware that this disagreement had the potential to spiral into a major family dispute. Victor believed he was protecting Claire by restricting her interactions, while Jack was determined to respect her wishes for emotional support. Two patriarchs, each convinced of his own righteousness, were now set on a collision course that might endanger the very family unity both professed to defend. Claire, meanwhile, sat in the Abbott mansion's sunroom, her thoughts adrift as she gazed at the garden. It had been a whirlwind of emotions the past few weeks: sudden heartbreak, unexpected family drama, and the ongoing pressure to move forward. Yet what she truly longed for was empathy and reassurance. If people would just stand by her side, give her a shoulder to cry on, share comforting words, she felt certain she could face her hardships without succumbing to despair. Kyle tiptoed in, his cautious approach betraying an uncertainty about her current mood. They had talked for hours the night before, but the knowledge that Victor was interfering cast a heavy shadow. "Claire," Kyle began softly, I just heard my father got called to see Victor. I'm guessing it has something to do with me, with us." His voice trailed off. Claire managed a weak smile. "I don't want to be left alone, Kyle. I know people think I need space or time, but honestly, I just need the ones I care about to be there." Kyle nodded, sitting beside her and taking her hand. "I don't plan on going anywhere unless you want me to." He paused, recalling his father's warnings. "Dad doesn't agree with Victor's approach, so I think he'll be on our side. But I also know how persistent Victor can be. He's convinced he's doing the right thing, even if, in reality, he's hurting you." She squeezed Kyle's hand gently. "Then we'll just have to make him understand. I don't want to push away people who help me heal." Across town, in a plush restaurant overlooking Lake Genoa, Sally Spectra and Billy Abbott were celebrating a bright new chapter in their lives. Their relationship had seen its fair share of ups and downs, not to mention disapproval from certain corners of Genoa City. But for a brief, shining moment, everything felt perfect. Billy, always ready with a mischievous grin, had charmed his way into Sally's heart in a manner few saw coming. Now, they toasted to success, happiness, and the promise of a brighter future. "Here's to us," Billy declared, clinking his glass against Sally's. "We deserve these good days after all the storms." Sally smiled, her eyes reflecting genuine joy. "I can't argue with that. If there's anything this city has taught me, it's to treasure moments of happiness whenever they appear." They shared a laugh, unaware, or perhaps only faintly aware, of the wave of complications that might soon wash over their new romance. The name on both of their minds, though unspoken, was Phyllis Summers. Renowned for her resourcefulness and disregard for boundaries, Phyllis had a knack for turning any situation to her advantage. And in this instance, it seemed she had her eyes fixed firmly on Billy. Phyllis's motives were seldom straightforward. At times, she was driven by revenge, at others, by genuine affection. Yet frequently, her actions blurred the line between the two, leaving destruction in her wake. Rumor had it she wasn't content simply to stand by and watch Billy and Sally flourish. Instead, she was determined to throw herself into the equation, and possibly into Billy's arms. That prospect unsettled Sally enough that she couldn't help but glance around the restaurant, half expecting Phyllis to appear out of nowhere with a cunning smile and a sarcastic remark. Later that evening, Phyllis sat in her suite at the Grand Phoenix, phone in hand, scrolling through photos of Billy and Sally's date. A cool confidence lit her features as she analyzed each image. Had Billy always looked that carefree? And Sally, did she really deserve him? Phyllis had been close to Billy before, an alliance colored by intense passion and equally intense drama. She understood him in ways few others did. Perhaps it was that familiarity that propelled her to intervene. Or maybe it was a desire to reclaim something that once belonged to her, even if only in her mind. "They won't stay this happy for long," she murmured, setting her phone aside. A plan was already taking shape, and she contemplated how best to re-enter Billy's orbit. Subtlety was rarely her strong suit, and Billy, for all his charm, was known to follow his heart rather than his head. If anyone could disrupt a blossoming relationship, it was Phyllis. The question was whether her persistence would succeed or backfire spectacularly, hurting everyone in its path. As the days pressed on, Genoa City buzzed with speculation. Word of Victor and Jack's clash spread through the grapevine, raising the stakes for Claire, Kyle, and the families around them. Uncertainty loomed over Billy and Sally's newfound happiness like a gathering storm, with Phyllis's ambitions poised to test the resilience of their love. Each of these events spoke to the undeniable truth of life in Genoa City. Drama and relationships were intertwined like vines in a dense forest, each twist and turn revealing new secrets and old rivalries. In the midst of it all, Claire found herself making a life-altering decision. Rather than letting Victor or any other external figure dictate the emotional support she received, she resolved to take the reins. If she wanted people around, if she wanted Kyle's presence and the Abbotts' love, then she would stand up to Victor, explaining that solitude only deepened her feelings of isolation. Meanwhile, Jack prepared for a confrontation, ready to defend Kyle's right to console Claire. He was determined to prove to Victor that family does not mean shutting people out at their most vulnerable, but rallying around them instead. Victor, of course, remained unconvinced. He believed himself the ultimate protector, even when his so-called protection threatened to unravel the very foundation of his family's bonds. Yet conflict had never frightened him. He thrived in high-stakes environments, where his willpower and determination could shine. The real question was whether he could see past his own ego in time to do what Claire genuinely needed, or whether his stubbornness would lead to an even deeper rift. Over in the world of romance, Billy and Sally continued to savor their golden days, trying their best to ignore the looming shadow Phyllis cast over their joyful moments. However, in Genoa City, no happiness remains unchallenged for long. Phyllis's schemes, whatever they might be, would soon knock on their door, testing their resolve and illuminating just how strong, or fragile, their connection truly was. And so, the stage was set for yet another round of high-stakes drama. Victor and Jack remained on a collision course, with Kyle, Claire, and the delicate balance of family unity hanging in the balance. Sally and Billy basked in a love that felt full of promise but was also susceptible to interference from the outside. And Phyllis, the ever-resourceful, ever-calculating Phyllis, stood poised to disrupt everything she touched, whether motivated by longing, jealousy, or an insatiable taste for chaos. Such was life in Genoa City. Each dawn brought new revelations, fresh alliances, and unexpected confrontations. Through heartbreak and healing, rivalries and romances, its residents discovered again and again that the trials of the present could reshape the trajectory of their futures. And from that undeniable reality sprang the energy that kept them moving forward, caught in a dance between trust and betrayal, hope and despair, love and fear. No one in town would be spared from the fallout that was surely on the horizon. Yet, for each struggle, there remained the possibility of redemption, second chances, and the transformative power of empathy. Claire wanted it, Jack championed it, and perhaps, deep down, even Victor yearned for it in his own complicated way. As for Billy and Sally, time would tell whether their newfound joy could outlast Phyllis's machinations. One thing was certain. In a place defined by constant twists and turns, every choice mattered, and every heartbeat carried the weight of possibility. The ultimate deception, the battle of the two Damiens. Genoa City was a town that had seen its fair share of betrayals, hidden identities, and elaborate schemes, but nothing could prepare its residents for the impending clash between the real Damien and his imposter. The stakes were high, the truth was clouded in deception, and at the center of it all was Nate, unknowingly walking into a carefully orchestrated trap. For weeks, whispers had circulated about Damien's sudden return, his demeanor slightly different, his words carefully chosen. Some sensed that something was off, but without proof, doubts remained unspoken. The question lingering on everyone's mind was, who would slip up first? Who would reveal their true nature before it was too late? The real Damien, trapped in a web of lies spun by his doppelganger, was desperate to reclaim his identity before permanent damage was done. The fake Damien, however, was cunning, calculating every move, ensuring that each interaction further solidified his presence. And then there was Nate, the wildcard in this tangled game. Would he see through the facade in time, or would he be another pawn manipulated in this dangerous chess match? But as the pieces moved across the board, another dark force lurked in the shadows: Amy. Amy, the true threat. While the two Damiens played their game of deception, Amy remained the true danger. Her manipulations ran deeper than anyone had imagined, and Audra had been assigned the task of unmasking her. Amy was more than just an accomplice, she was the mastermind, orchestrating events from behind the scenes. Her connection to Damien was shrouded in secrecy, but rumors suggested that she was hiding a far greater truth, the existence of her real son. Audra's investigation led her to an unsettling discovery: Amy had a real son somewhere out there. But rather than using him in her plans, she had chosen an imposter, a man with a dark soul, a man she could control. Why? Because a real son might possess morals, might hesitate at the thought of harming others, whereas a heartless imposter would do her bidding without question. Audra needed to move fast. If she could prove Amy's deception before Nate fell too deep into the trap, she could prevent an irreversible disaster. The question was, could she expose Amy before it was too late? And if the real son were to emerge, would he be a threat? Or could he be the key to taking Amy down? Billy's deadly dilemma, to kill or not to kill? As these battles for truth raged on, another war brewed inside Billy Abbott's mind. For years, Billy had harbored a grudge against Victor Newman, the man who had crushed him time and time again. Victor had manipulated, humiliated, and outplayed Billy at every turn, leaving wounds that had never fully healed. The desire for revenge burned within him, a fire that had never been extinguished. And then fate presented him with an opportunity he never imagined he'd have. Victor lay in a hospital bed, weak and vulnerable, on the brink of death. The mighty Newman patriarch, who had always seemed invincible, was now fragile, powerless. Billy stood outside the hospital room, his hands trembling as he debated his next move. It would be so easy. Just one moment alone with Victor, just one simple action, and he could finally rid himself of the man who had been his greatest enemy. For the first time in his life, Billy seriously considered crossing the line between justice and vengeance, between anger and murder. But could he do it? Billy had never killed before. He had fought, he had schemed, but he had never taken a life. The thought of doing so sent a shiver down his spine. Was he truly capable of ending Victor Newman once and for all? As he stood outside Victor's hospital room, the battle in his mind waged on. One voice told him to walk away, to let fate decide Victor's outcome. But another, darker voice whispered that this was his moment. His chance to finally be free of Victor's shadow. Billy reached for the door handle. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it. Would he walk inside and become a murderer? Or would he leave Victor to fight for his life on his own? A city on the brink. As these stories unfolded, Genoa City found itself teetering on the edge of chaos. The real Damien and his imposter, a battle for truth that could change everything. Amy's dangerous deception, a game of power and control, where the wrong move could cost lives. Billy's moral crisis, the decision that could turn him into the very monster he had always hated. One thing was certain, the storm was coming. And when it hit, no one in Genoa City would be left untouched.